Hey, GP learners. Are you a GP trainee or a GP trainer that just doesn't know what to do about the new RCA, the Recorded Consultation Assessment, and particularly how you can use and record consultations for the assessment itself? Well, in this episode, I speak to Dr. John Rial of the RCGP, who's been working with 14 Fish to create a system that allows you to upload not only your video consultations, your telephone consultations, and your face-to-face recorded consultations in practice. And we talk about various other parts about this, including how it looks from an educational supervisor's perspective, as well as how much it costs, and various other things like probity, security, and what do you do if the consultation isn't 10 minutes? As I said, if you're a trainee or a trainer, you need to watch this video. Shall we get straight to it and tech enhance your primary care and learning? Many people are confused and asking a lot of questions about the new methods of assessments for GP training. So the Recorded Consultation Assessment, or RCA, which replaces our Clinical Skills Assessment, the CSA. And as a result of that, there's been lots of changes that happen because of our healthcare situation. And we've got a really good episode where we're joined by Dr. John Rial, who's talking about how to use the new method of recording and uploading your consultations for the RCA for your exams, both from a trainee and from a trainer's point of view. How are we doing today, Jonathan?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, busy.
Yes, very much so. And thank you for joining us. I know you're very busy, and particularly over the past few weeks, there's been loads and loads of movement on this, and appreciate giving your time to show us effectively this new system. So if I'm right, you work with both the RCGP and with 14 Fish to kind of figure this whole thing out.
Yeah, so I'm employed by the RCGP, and I'm the clinical lead for trainee eportfolio development, and also I'm a CSA examiner. So I was asked to sort of get involved with this because I sort of know quite a bit about IT, and to work on the project. As it happens, 14 Fish got the tender for the RCA, which is great because I already have a working relationship with them. And so I've been working a lot with them, employed by the college to help deliver this.
Yeah. And if people wanted to check out one of the early interviews I did with Jonathan as part of the Innovate podcast, feel free to do so. And I'll stick a link to that in the show notes and things. And obviously there is this plan for the new portfolio for trainees to go online shortly, isn't there? I think that's in the medium-term future, Q3
Yeah,
or something?
absolutely. So there is definitely plans for it to go to all other deaneries other than Wessex in the next few months. Obviously, COVID has impacted on the plans, but we're very hopeful this should be happening very soon.
Cool. So today what we wanted to try and show you is, because with the new RCA and the fact that trainees will now be able to submit recorded consultations, both from telephone, video consultations and face-to-face as part of the new assessment, obviously there needed to be this new mechanism, and that's effectively what we're going to talk about and show you today in this episode. So Jonathan's going to take over a little bit because he's going to show us everything from his perspective, if that's all right.
Okay. Right, so this is where you will land when you sort of first log in to 14 Fish, and you won't have all the same stuff as me, but you'll notice on the right this pink box where it says remote consultation. And this is where you would click to actually get into the consultation tool. So you would click on that part and it would take you to this screen where you've got the option of video call, phone call, or upload. So the video call, obviously, it's using video technology, so you need the person at the other end to have a decent connection and a mobile phone or a computer which has got connectivity and a video camera. Phone call, obviously, if you don't have that option, is another option which can work with landlines and mobile phones. And then upload is the ability to upload audio files or video files. And of any sort of type, basically. So looking through first at the video call, what you'll need to do is you'll need to enter the patient's mobile number, and you can have a little toggle here to decide whether you want to record or not. If you're not going to use this for recording purposes, either for your educational supervisor to look at or to potentially submit to the assessment, then you can switch off the recording. However, if you want to leave it on, you would then type in the patient's number here, and then they would get a text message, as would you. Then you have the option of either using your computer to do the consults, if it's got a webcam and audio, or you can use your mobile phone to allow you to do the consult. Now, the mobile phone's probably better. The quality of audio you get from a mobile phone is generally much better than a lot of the computers, and there tends to be a bit of echo sometimes with computers. So I'd always recommend using your mobile phone if you've got that to hand. And things like a sort of swan neck stand, or that I know that Dr. Gandhi's done stuff on before, actually is really helpful to have on your desk, so that you can put your mobile phone at a decent height rather than getting a good video of your chin.
Yes, definitely. I think it's important that people remember that if you are using your mobile phone, having it in a position that means that it just looks useful to the patient and to yourself as well. You don't want to end up with a crick neck from trying to look at a funny screen and things. But yeah, definitely important that you've got the right placement.
Right, so should we do a demo, Dr. Candy?
Yeah, I think we'll go for it.
Okay, so I'll be typing in the patient's number, and then you click invite patient. So what happens now is the screen has changed, and you can see that for me, I'm the doctor. The SMS is sent and delivered, but not yet joined.
Yeah, so I've got that on my screen, and that's just arrived, and people will see me now clicking on that to open it.
And that says the text is from Fish Consult, I think, is that?
Yep, Fish Consult.
Yep.
So I've now been asked that the consultation will be recorded. All video recordings are carried out in accordance with the guidance by the GMC and be encrypted and stored securely. They'll be deleted within 1 year of the recording taking place. Don't have to agree to your consultation being recorded if you don't want to. And I've got a yes or no question, and I've got John's face staring at me as well, which is quite nice. So I'm going to click yes. It's going to ask me to use my microphone, so I'm going to click allow, and my camera, so I'm going to click allow as well.
And I've got the same thing. It's asking me to allow to use the video and the audio of my phone. And it's now saying connecting. Right, I'm just going to mute Zoom.
Yep, so we're going to...
There we are. So now we can do a video consult. Initially, the image can be a bit blurry as it's sort of catching up.
Mm-hmm.
But then after sort of 10, 20 seconds, it seems to improve.
Yeah, so that looks great. And I can see you, you can see me. That seems to work pretty well. Cool. So we've done the consultation. I guess now I click the cross. Is that correct?
So either I click the cross or you press the cross, and then you'll be asked about your consent again.
All right, let's have a look at that. So click the cross. It's disconnected. So I've now got a text message that says that your consent. Thank you for consenting to our call being recorded. You can find out more details at 14fish.com.
Good. Yeah, so if you click on that link, it takes you to the page on 14fish with more information and how you might retract your consent at a later date.
Okay. So it didn't actually ask me to reconfirm my consent at the end. Is it meant to do that?
It may have been switched off because we switched to the texting, because the patient needs to have a link to the page where the information is on how they retract. So I think we may have moved to the texting, because we did find that patients were ending and then just shutting down the browser very quickly, and so often they didn't anyway. So as long as they've got the text afterwards, it's giving them the option to retract should they wish.
Cool. Okay.
So as the trainee, I'm now given this page, and it's giving me an option to sort of say about the quality of the call, which is really sort of formative for 14fish, so they can analyze and see if there were issues and any specific comments. So it was fine. So if you put 1 because it just didn't connect or whatever, then 14fish will get a notification of that, and we'll be able to look into why that might have occurred and try and make a fix.
Mm-hmm.
Underneath is what's called the workbook. So this is the bit of the information that the trainee fills in, which is helpful for them, helpful for their educational supervisor, but also the examiner will be able to see this information. So a case title, so something along the lines of what the clinical case is. So Monday morning surgery probably isn't that helpful. I would probably say something like, thyroid problem. So it just gives you an idea to remember what that case is.
Mm-hmm.
Then age, And again, this is really just for the purposes of the trainee to try and get a breadth of coverage. So you don't want just all old people, you don't want just all children, so it just allows you to sort of see where we are. Gender and then clinical topics. So these are the clinical topic areas from the curriculum. Okay. So again, the examiner is only going to be marking one of your cases, so they're only going to see this one particular case. So the idea is, as a trainee, is you will try and get a broad spectrum of those cases, and so this will just is guidance for you. So if you can't find what topic it might fall in, so some people have said, oh look, I can't find child health there, but if we add child health, then any child you see, you'll tab child health, but then the child has probably got an ENT problem or probably got some kind of infection. So we haven't put that in for that reason, otherwise it starts getting confusing. So it's really a guide for the trainee to make sure they have a breadth of coverage. So choose your clinical topic.
And I guess with that as well, I mean, you'll have the age of the patient as well, and that would obviously be relevant in terms of, you know, children, yes, elderly people, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and as I say, this is not sort of mandated. We're not saying you need to have a broad sort of spectrum, but I think it's helpful for the trainee as a guide that they want to sort of show a spectrum of their cases.
Sure. And then I think similarly submitting 13 cases all about gastroenterology is probably not a great idea either.
No, I agree. I agree. And then a short sentence to describe the case. So it only needs to be a one line. Again, that's just for you and the educational supervisor and the examiner to sort of get some background information. So sore throat that presented 3 days ago, something along those lines.
Okay.
Click save, and then that will save. Now, what will happen now is it will say recorded, queued for processing. It will tell you the duration of the consultation, and then if you shared it. Now, obviously, I can't share it yet because it is still processing. Now, processing will take, depending on the length of the consult, between 20 minutes and a couple of hours, just because what's happening is those two videos that we did need to be put together, sort of blended, and then it needs to be sort of secured. So it needs to be encrypted in a very sort of encrypted way and then put onto a different server for it to be viewed by yourself.
Okay.
So we'll come back later and hopefully that will be there. So phone call, we'll move on to phone call now. It works in the similar way that you can toggle on or off recording. If you're not going to record it, we would just suggest that you pick up the phone and dial the patient. If you are going to do a phone call, what you'll do is you'll type in the mobile number or the landline number here and click phone patient. What that will do is it will then phone the patient on their mobile phone or their landline. So they will get an incoming call. When they pick up the phone, there will be a voice message to say this consultation is being recorded for training and assessment purposes. If you agree to this being recorded, then please press 2. If you decline, then please press 1 and hang up. So if the patient presses 2, obviously, then the trainee will know. They will then dial a number and it will connect them to the phone call, so they'll be connected together. If the patient declines, then the trainee will get a notification on the screen, and then we'll just phone the patient on the normal landline.
Okay, and that sounds like it works quite sensibly. So we're not going to demo that for you because it seems pretty self-evident about what will happen.
There have been a lot of questions about consent at the end of the telephone calls, and that has caused us a lot of difficulty, because actually initially we had a voice message at the end of the phone call, but the patient, when they finished the phone call, hung up, so they're not hearing that message at the end. So the plan now is that when they get that introductory consent question, they are advised to stay on the line at the end of the call to hear some further information and to reconfirm their consent.
Okay.
So the trainee will be prompted to, right at the end of the consult, to say, do you mind just staying on the line at the end? And then they will hang up as the trainee. The patient will then get another message to say, are you still happy for this to have been recorded? And further information is available on this website.
Okay. And then the final one, I believe, is uploading videos of face-to-face consultations.
Yeah, so this was added yesterday, so it's all new. This is obviously a request that's come in and will allow you to upload face-to-face consults or any consults that are recorded in any other way that need to be uploaded. So again, you'd start with a brief title and then enter the patient's phone number. So there's a question here, why are we entering the patient's phone number? And then this will explain why we're doing that. Then you've got to decide whether you do whether it's an upload or whether a video file or an audio file. And make sure you get this right. If you've done a video file and you click audio file, it's only going to upload the audio. So if you've done a video, make sure you click on video.
Okay.
It's going to ask about this question will probably change, but basically you are not allowed to edit the recording other than trimming maybe at the beginning or the end. You can't sort of cut out a chunk in the middle and then blend it together, because then we have problems of what have you cut out, etc. So there is no editing allowed other than trimming at the beginning or the end. So this will just be confirmation of that. And then consent. So consent has been an evolving issue and a very difficult one for the system to handle. And there's been lots of information going about. Essentially, the college, as the data controller, when this information is submitted, needs evidence that the patient has consented. So trainee self-declaring is not acceptable, unfortunately, which is what we'd hoped for initially. So there needs to be evidence that the patient has consented. So the way that they would do this is either through gaining consent on the recording, either as an audio or video file, and that will not count as time towards their 10 minutes of the assessment. So if they spend 30 seconds gaining consent, then that won't count as part of that 10 minutes. The other option is to attach evidence of consent. So a consent form, which they've downloaded and it's been signed, or if you use Accurix, for instance, to get consent from the patient, then a screenshot of their consent, I think, would also be acceptable.
So basically just some proof of it. And I guess for the face-to-face consultations, a lot of practices should already have that process in place anyway, because if you're doing your COTS or that kind of stuff, then, when it comes to videoing consultations, I would imagine most practices already have that in place. If not, I believe there is a standard RCGP videoing consultation consent form available, so dead easy to use.
Right. And there's one that's been tweaked for the RCA as well, so okay. and that'll be available, and we'll hope to put a link to that on here, basically on this part of 14 Fish.
Okay, cool. Quick question, because you raised it there. Obviously, there's this question about the 10-minute time frame that trainees have to submit. So the RCA is a 10-minute timed consultation examination. Clearly, GP consultations are not 10 minutes. They haven't been for many months and years, to be honest. How will that work from the assessment point of view? Will it be the first 10 minutes? Will the patient be able to say, actually, I just want you to look at these 10 minutes? Is that an option? How does that work?
Yeah, so again, we've had lots of sort of discussion about whether we have, what time, at what point does it start? Is the trainee able to decide when? It gets very confusing if you start sort of having timers that you can slide to say, right, it must start there, or the trainee sort of specifying. So essentially what we will do, if it's through the 14 Fish system, we will assume that consent has been obtained, and we will essentially start at the time that it connects both of you, and then at 10 minutes that consultation will end, and we will stop marking. If it's through another medium where consent is obtained, we will have a timer. We will start when the consent part has finished, and then time 10 minutes for that. So there is some sort of flexibility with regard to consent, but essentially we do have to be marking 10 minutes of the consultation to make sure that it's fair, and that we can get through all of these consultation assessments in the time period that we've got, but also it's sort of linked very much with the CSA, and that was always 10 minutes.
And I guess that leads into then case selection. being a key part of this. So, as I mentioned, real world general practice, particularly with the way that things are going with other healthcare professionals doing a lot more of the more commoner consultations. I won't say simple, but things like the UTIs, those kind of things that can be dealt with in quite a simple time frame. We are seeing multiple conditions in one consultation. We are seeing complex stuff having to be dealt with, and then especially in post-COVID, a lot of social things that get added into the consultation. How will that evolve in terms of the assessment side of things? Because it's going to be quite challenging, I think, particularly in deprived populations, especially for trainees to find consultations that fit within the 10-minute time frame.
Yeah, so like you say, if it's very low challenge, then it's going to be difficult for them to demonstrate their competence in all of the CSA, RCA domains. So it does need to be of a reasonable sort of challenge. So if it's too challenging, like you say, it's going to go on for more than 10 minutes. And what we don't want to do is the trainee to cut short their consultation because they think, oh, this is a good one, I want to use it for the RCA. We don't want this to impact on patient care. It's really important that is the case. So it is not straightforward. I think the trainee is going to have to record more than the 13, obviously, which is why I try to get them access to do this as soon as possible. But I would say, aiming for medium complexity consults that are sort of lasting 9-10 minutes, that are not just sort of straightforward things. And we're hoping to put some more guidance, or HE are hoping to put some more guidance on the sort of cases that would be good ones to demonstrate the trainee's competence in that period of time. Mm-hmm. Even if the consultation goes on for 11 minutes, it doesn't stop you from submitting it. Even if it goes on for 15 minutes, it doesn't stop you from submitting it. But what you might lose is some of the part of the clinical management. But if it lasts for 11 minutes and you've essentially finished a consult by 10, and then the end is chatting about another aspect or something else, then that still is acceptable as a submission. And you may well get all of the domains in there, even though the consult went on longer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So we've recorded the consultation, so either via video, telephone, or we've uploaded it. What happens next? Okay, so what will happen next is it will be in this area. So this is where the video and the telephone consults and the uploads will be stored. So the trainee will be able to see the title, when it was, etc. And then they'll be able to go into each of these to watch them themselves and share them with their educational supervisor. So if I click on this one, what it's going to do is it's going to ask me to, because I want to watch a video, this is where we need two-factor authentication. So my mobile number is known by the system. What I'll have to do is send myself a code, which I'll do by pressing that button. I will then get a text message again from 14 Fish. This will be a unique code that I then enter. And that will allow me to get to the consult. So until I've done that two-factor authentication, you can't go in and share it. So what you then got is, again, this workbook details, and you can edit that. So if you change your mind of what you want to call it, etc., you can do. How the patient was consented. So if it was an upload, it's going to say, and if you've got attachments for the consent, then they'll be there as well. You can delete the consultation. So if the patient later contacts the surgery and says, I retract my consent for this consult to be recorded, to be sort of stored, then the trainee would go in and delete the consultation here. And then there's also the option to obviously play your consultation. You can speed it up should you wish, if you want to watch it a bit quicker, and that applies for the educational supervisor as well. And then you can share it with your supervisor. So if you click on share, you can, the people that you shared it with more recently will be at the top, and then you can share it with someone else, another supervisor if they're not on that list. So some people have educational supervisors, some people have clinical supervisors. Some people might have supervisors that they're with now, and then just before they want to submit, their educational supervisor goes on holiday and they'll need someone else to look at this consultation. So they will
they can share it with that other person. So they would tick the person they want to share it with, click share. That person would then be able to view that video on their side of 14 Fish.
Okay. So I guess clearly this can also work as a method of trainers and trainees looking at their COTS, for example. They just don't have to submit them for the actual RCA. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So this can be used for that as well. Yeah. So you can see that the video that we just did is now stopped uploading. And here it is. So it's now saying connecting. So it's starting. There we are.
There we go.
So what I'll do is I'll now share this with my supervisor. Click share. And so that should now be shared with my supervisor.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll now leave this screen, which is a trainee, and I'll go in as a supervisor.
Cool.
And I got an email notification, by the way, to say my video has uploaded, because I had that toggle on. So I've got an email to say your video is uploaded. And then I've also just got an email as the educational supervisor to say a video has been shared with you. Click on this link to view it. So now hopefully you can see, let me just move the screen across. So this is now the view of the educational supervisor. Does it say ES at the top?
Yes.
Fantastic. So the educational supervisor will log in. This is what they'll see. So at the top here on the right, you've got consultations shared for your review. Go to supervisors area. So I will click on that. And that will take you to the bit where the consultations are shared with you. And then again, you click on view. You're going to have to do the two-factor authentication as the supervisor. So I'm now, again, logged in as supervisor. I'll have to type in to see this video, because we need security at every step. So I should now be able to go in and view the consults. So the title of the consult is at the top here. Comments that I want to make, which will go to the trainee but not be sent to the examiners, are below. And you can, as an assessor, you can, educational supervisor, you can decide whether you share that with the trainee or not. But we also have the option to add timestamps to add comments at particular times. So here I have a comment, nice use of the phone, and I've typed that in, and then number 4. So you can essentially write good use of ice. That will then be tagged to 47 seconds on the consultation. So when the trainee watches this back, they will have all these tags. They'll be able to see the comments from the educational supervisor. I can move these around should I wish, and you can jump to them and add whatever comments you want, or delete them, or add a further comment should you wish.
Okay.
So this allows the educational supervisor to just add comments to this review. They don't have to. This is for sort of formative learning purposes, and all of this information will not get passed should this be submitted to the assessment.
Okay.
Important thing to know is if any of these recordings shouldn't be used as COTS or audio COTS before they're submitted to the exam.
Yeah, so you just beat me to my question. So what happens if that was to be, is there a mechanism for preventing that, or is it just relying on the trainees and the supervisors to use it effectively?
Yeah, it's relying on them not to do that. There's no mechanism to stop it.
Okay. And I guess there's clearly a probity element in there that if you did and found out, then obviously you've got some challenges to deal with at that point.
So one other thing just to go back to the educational supervisor review, a bit that is not on there yet is that the educational supervisor will be asked to confirm that consent has been obtained if it's uploaded from another source. So
Okay.
we need the educational supervisor to confirm that that's okay. And the educational supervisor will probably also be asked to confirm that the trainee is the trainee and that this was a real patient.
Cool.
And this is important to be done before these cases are able to be submitted to the exam, because it's really important that we know that this is the trainee that recorded this consultation and it is a real patient.
Sure. So I guess, the trainee's now done this a few times, they've practiced, they've got their 13 cases ready. It's now their RCA submission date. How do they submit those cases to the RCA?
Okay, so what will happen is the trainee will go to their screen with all of the cases, and they will be a little empty star on the right-hand side, and they will sort of tick those ones that they want to submit. So they will star 13 cases, and they won't be able to star them until the educational supervisor has confirmed that the consent has been obtained and that it is confirmed identity. Once they've starred 13, they can then submit to the exam, which is a button at the bottom, and those 13 will then be submitted. If they star 12, it's going to tell them you haven't starred enough. If they star 14, it's going to say you've got one too many. So it's up to the trainee to select the correct cases and then click that submit button at the bottom. Once they submit those 13 cases will disappear from the trainee's log. They'll be able to see the titles and the workbook details, but they won't be able to watch the video any longer. Those have then been submitted, and the secure key to access those videos has been handed over to the Royal College of GPs examiner to then watch those consults.
Okay. So a slightly unusual question, and I appreciate you may not be able to answer this just yet. There's obviously going to be a time lag between when the trainee submits the consultations and the examiners mark the consultations. What happens if the patient rescinds their consent in that time frame?
So we have thought about this because it is something that might happen. So the patient will probably initially contact the practice to say, I'd like to rescind my consent. So then there's two options. Either the trainee, the education supervisor, or the patient contacts the Royal College, and the Royal College will delete that consultation. And then we will have a mechanism for the trainee to submit a further consultation. So the ones that they didn't submit, the 13 they didn't submit, sorry, the ones that they haven't submitted of the 13 are still there. So they'll have to use one of those to submit to make up to the 13.
So potentially a tip is just to be sure that you're not caught out, maybe have 14 cases that you're thinking would be ideal and pick the top 13 and have one in spare just in case.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think it's unlikely that this will happen, but sure. The potential is there. So yeah, make sure you've got one.
Cool. So submitted and everything, and we've seen what it looks like both from the trainee perspective and from the trainer's perspective. I guess, was there anything other kind of things that you felt trainees needed to know about this kind of system?
Nothing that I can think of. I mean, a lot of work has gone into making this incredibly secure. A lot of work has gone into thinking about the consent, but bear in mind that this has all happened in the last 2.5 to 3 weeks, and I think that just needs to be taken into account that it's been done at a very, very high speed, and I think, you know, I'm delighted with where we are at this stage, to be quite honest, given the time period we've had.
Sure. And I've heard that there is an additional cost attached to the RCA element of it, not just the exam cost itself, but in terms of using this particular system. Is that correct?
So initially there was talk, because some of the technology that's used, certainly the telephone calls are quite expensive because there's an outgoing call to the patients, but at the moment there is no extra cost. So the cost to do the RCA encompasses that.
Okay. And obviously, from some point in the near future, trainees will have access to the 14 Fish eportfolio, which will hopefully link a lot of this, easier, make the aesthetics of it a lot more comfortable for people and things. Do you see there being any challenges that trainees are going to have to deal with when it comes to that point, or is it hopefully just going to work?
It should just work. So in Wessex, we obviously are already on the new eportfolio, and there are Wessex trainees that are using the RCA, and there hasn't been any problems. Essentially, it's just a new area that appeared on their dashboard if they're eligible to take the RCA. So the same thing should occur with when the rest of the country goes to new portfolio. The only slight complication is if the trainee has used a different login email address to register for 14 Fish on the RCA system to their regular login to the trainee eportfolio, there is going to be a discrepancy with email addresses, but the system is programmed to try and ratify that and get the trainee to decide which one they want as their login to 14 Fish.
Mhm. I guess I mentioned earlier one of the really useful things about this is this can be used for things like COTS in particular as an assessment mechanism. Obviously, it's not just RCA stage ST3 trainees that do COTS. It is your ST1s and your ST2s. So will they have access to this type of system, or should they not really be doing that?
So certainly at the moment they don't have access, and they won't have access. At the moment, the access is only given to those who are in the priority list of those who are CCTing before the 30th of September, because it's a new assessment, it's new technology, and we need to prioritise that. And obviously there are cost implications for allowing access to this. I agree, this is potentially useful as a tool for COTS and audio COTS, but it was not why this was designed. This was designed purely as the RCA assessment, and that is what it's being used for at the moment. But I can fully appreciate that this could be quite a useful teaching tool as a trainer myself going forwards, and so that is something that the college may decide to explore at a later date.
And as you mentioned, obviously this has been prioritised for those trainees that are due to CCT before the 30th of September. We know that the RCA is going to be with us for a period much longer than that. When do you see, or do you know when trainees that are, for example, planning on taking what would have been their CSA in December, January time, do you have an idea when they will be able to access this system? Because also they will need to start generating those cases fairly soon, to be honest.
Yes, completely agree. As soon as that's sort of been decided, the dates of the assessments, then the information will be available. At the moment, it's still going through the RCA group as to when the next sitting will be. But as soon as more information comes out, and then hopefully these trainees will get access to start collecting this evidence as soon as possible.
Okay, cool. So thank you for your time, John. I know I've really appreciated this, and I know hopefully a lot of our EGP learners will be able to look at this and see, and effectively how to use the system, where they can find out effectively the basics, uploading, taking the videos and stuff, and obviously case selection and that kind of thing. Obviously, more information about this is going to come out over the coming weeks, and as you said, it's effectively in pilot phase still. Obviously, we've got the first cohort that need to get through quickly, and then obviously it'll be expanded from there. So definitely anybody who wants to see more information, check out the RCGP website, or obviously be uploaded from there. And I'm sure more information will be coming down. I know a lot of areas have been running sessions for trainers and for trainees to try and get as much of this information out as quickly as possible. And hopefully when the new portfolio comes out, we'll see a lot more of this kind of stuff as well, which I'm really keen to see. Actually, it still looks amazing. Really looking forward to this. So thank you. I really wanted to just mention that as well.
Thanks.
So EGP learners, as always, if you've got any comments or questions, feel free to contact myself on whichever platform you prefer. If you want to contact John, I know he's on Twitter. It was at John Rial, was it?
Yep.
Yeah. And we'll put links to all this stuff down below in the show notes as well. So feel free to check that out. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you click subscribe and definitely leave us a review on iTunes. And if you're watching on YouTube, definitely ring that bell, subscribe, and make sure you get all of our content first and foremost whenever you want it. And as always, EGP Learning is here to help save you and your patients time by taking enhancing primary care and learning. Catch you in the next episode.